Hey everybody, Bobby here. I haven't done a Facebook Live in like forever, mostly because I do most of my videos on LinkedIn now, and then I often do Instagram stories and things like that. But this has been a long time coming. I wanted to briefly just talk a bit about my Facebook protocols, particularly for posting political stuff. Recently is because we have a very interesting election going on right now, and we've had elections before, whether it's the Canadian federal election or whether it's the one we had for the U.S. one. But I want to talk about kind of my protocols, and people have been particularly some of my more I'll call them conservative friends send me private messages or comments, and they complain or critique about how I post, saying that various things like, oh, it's biased or it's one side or whatever. But let me just address this, okay? So, number one, the one big question always comes up: how come you post this stuff, you don't post that stuff? Well, the truth is that political posts, there's like thousands of things that we care about. So, like some people care about the economy, healthcare, mass transit, social issues. There's so many different, the environment. And the truth is, there's certain things that I, post a lot about, and things that I don't post a lot about. I typically post a lot about things that are important to me, like diversity, inclusion, equality. I typically don't post very much about the economy or the environment. I mean, not that I don't care about those things. I do care about those things. But again, you can't post about everything. So I think that's one of the challenges in terms of, how we post stuff. So people who complain about the fact, well, you don't post enough about this issue. Well, again, I can't post about every single thing. Plus, now with the new Facebook algorithm, how can I can't even post stuff every day. Like nowadays, I'm posting 2 or 3 things about the election, and no one's seeing it because I guess people are bored of it, or Facebook cuts down the algorithm, which is fine. Like I get it, but I'm going to post stuff that I think is really important. But I've also taken my posting down to like really small numbers per day, which is unfortunate because now we can't get the word out there. But yeah, so like that's one thing, and then there's always the complaint. Well, you never complain about this person, that person, and let me be very clear. I'm definitely going to complain more about the actions of stuff that goes against my values and things that I care about. So going back to diversity, inclusion, safety, health, equality, freedom, those are things that I care the most about. And so whenever I see any leader or any political person do stuff that goes against that, in particular, bullying, divisive, racist, xenophobic, misogynist kind of stuff, I am definitely going to talk about it. I'm going to point it out. And whether it happens to be one side or the other, that's the way it is. I mean, if Doug Ford or Kathleen Wynne or Andrew Horvath or the Green guy start engaging in stuff that goes against diversity and goes against inclusiveness and equality, yeah, I'm going to call that stuff out because that's the most important thing to me. That said, I mean, if someone points something out that's, wrong with a behavior by any of the leaders and parties, I'll acknowledge it. I'm not going to do it though if people do it in a way that doesn't connect in a strong way. I have people who engage, I would say, in a very fiery way or in a condescending way or things like that. And personally, I don't really care for that. I'm all about connection. I want to understand what your concerns are. I have friends on all sides, on the right and on the left and in the middle, who have very thoughtful messages, and they share their concerns in a very deep and personal way that I think really connects. And then I have people on all sides who do it in a very condescending and a very personal attacking kind of way. And honestly, that doesn't reach anybody. So I don't really see the point of that for the most part. People, for the most part, yeah, I've been attacking most of the behaviors of Doug Ford, but that's because there's lots to talk about. In particular, they hit all the key priorities that I talked about earlier. And for me, the truth is, bullying and xenophobia and bigotry and divisiveness and that whole kind of, that kind of attacking, hateful rhetoric type stuff, to me is far more problematic for me than whether they have a perceived good or bad plan about the economy or about the environment. I think that whether they're my high school principal or if it's my uncle or my dad or whether it's a corporate CEO or whether it's my political leader, if they are bullying, divisive, and misogynistic, then they need to be held accountable, and I don't see why people should support that kind of stuff. That to me is a huge issue. And then going back to the thing that I don't post about, critique about everybody. Listen, I critiqued Jack Layton because I thought when he said I'm running for prime minister when clearly he wasn't winning, I thought that was BS, and I called that out. When Kathleen Wynne didn't resign when her approval rate was 9%, I thought that was ridiculous. So, I do call that stuff out. When Andrea Horwath forced an election that lost a minority government, which I do prefer, and then created that liberal majority, which then created this huge bitter partisanship, I was very angry at her, and I called her out for that. But the truth is, all the stuff that's happening now concerns me greatly, because when it comes to being a person of color, being someone who is a feminist, being someone who cares about people, who cares about the plight of people, in my mind, what Doug Ford's plan or lack of plan is, it really goes against that kind of stuff. And then the other issue is, I think one of the complaints I got was I posted a critical, it was like a humor piece, and someone sent me a message, why are you posting stuff about that? That's not really fair. Well, that's fine. If you think it's unfair, by all means comment on it, but just do it in a thoughtful way and point out the facts, as opposed to, doing things in an emotionally biased way. And then I'm happy to acknowledge or listen to it. But that's it. When it comes to comedy, if it's a comedic meme, I've posted about everybody. Like there was one about Trudeau in India, with the Namaste thing. And yes, I posted that because I thought it was hilarious. And if there's one about someone else, I'll post that kind of stuff. Absolutely. To me, if it's comedy, everybody's open. I'm happy to share that stuff. But when it comes to actual political posts, then there are only the things that, again, it's a priority list, right? Yes, I'll post some stuff about the economy or about the environment or about transit. But again, I'm really big on diversity, inclusiveness, equality, all that kind of stuff. That's the stuff that I really, really get focused on, and also because I've personally experienced racism and xenophobia, and I worry about my kids, my kids and being mixed beige kids, and I worry about those things. So that's why I post that kind of stuff. So, that to me was the main thing I wanted to address today, for the most part, because I think people, need to understand how that works. And again, if you don't like my post, you're welcome to pass them by. If you have a critique or something you want to say, by all means, go for it. You can say what you want. I'm happy to do that. And just to answer number 2, which is, someone said, well, isn't your political post going to affect your personal brand? Absolutely affects my brand. What are you going to stand for? I stand for equality, diversity, inclusiveness, freedom, and safety. I stand for calling out hypocrisy. I stand against bullies. I stand against people who are misogynists. I stand against people who would make my children and my family feel not supported. So yeah, those are the things I stand for. Yes, and again, I stand for a good economy, but again, I've already made it clear, I don't really trust any majority government to do well with the economy. They'll do the things that support them and their party and their donors for the most part, which is another reason why I want a minority government. So, for my personal brand, your personal brand is being true to who you are and sharing what you believe. This is exactly what I'm doing. I'm sharing exactly what I believe. And I learned over the years to not personally attack people like I used to back in the day of Rob Ford. And then someone called me out and I said, you know what, you're right, I'm bad, let me stop doing that. Let's just focus on behaviors, focus on ideas, and call them out when they're bad. And acknowledge the fact that we all have bias. And if I'm biased in some way, yeah, I'm biased towards kids issues, absolutely, because I have kids. I'm biased towards diversity and equality because, those are things that I highly value. So, yes, I totally understand that. But, this election reminds me of the Trump thing. When Trump happened 2 years ago, I got more and more racism at me way back in the last 2 years. I've experienced more racism and xenophobia in the last 2 years than I have in 20 years. It's insane. And that culture is now coming here to Canada, and people are not calling out the fact that we have a leader that does these bullying, divisive, misogynistic, xenophobic stuff. And there's other ones too, and some people, but show me an example of where he's racist or homophobic. You know what? There's attitudes and beliefs, and maybe no one said anything specific, but it's all there, and there's a lot there. Even if it's not all there, there's a lot there, and there's enough to say this is something that we should be concerned about. And so for me, I don't support any of the leaders. I think they've all screwed up, but I definitely am gunning for a not Ford majority, and I definitely want to make sure we have a minority government. I definitely want voter reform. What do I stand for? That's what I stand for. I really want more proportional representation. That's what I care about. When Justin Trudeau balked on voter reform, I called it out and I was very upset. Because to me, voter reform is going to be, I think, given the partisan shit that we have so far, nowadays we're seeing, and all the bitterness, it's going to be the best thing that's going to help bridge us together. And I know you're going to say, well, minority governments work slowly, don't get much done. It's true. At first they don't. But if we have voter reform, or if we continue to have this slowly and steadily, we will actually create a culture of working together and listening to each other, as opposed to just doing what we want for the next 4 or 5 years while we still have the majority. So, my personal brand, I have no problem with how it's affected. In my mind, my personal brand is intact the way it is. I'm being Bobby the way I am. And then the last thing, what I stand for, I think I've already talked about that. But the one thing I don't like is hypocrisy, and I'll call it any leader that does that. They're all culpable. But again, to me, I don't understand, and maybe some of you people can explain to me. Like, I understand you need change. Fine, let's get rid of Wynne. But but someone who bullies people, someone who's misogynistic, someone who engaged in just such openly fraudulent, divisive, behavior, and they're not even having a full scale plan. To me, I'm not sure why we are okay with that. I don't care what their policy idea, how good they are. In my mind, if your policy ideas can be good or bad, but if you're a bully, if you are xenophobic, if you're homophobic, you're racist, you're sexist, or all of the above, then you need to be held accountable. And I don't think that type of leadership is what we need, because that culture is going to creep in, and we're going to embolden, we're going to empower people to be this way. You're going to normalize this. And so again, that's my plea. I tell you what I stood for. I tell you what my posting protocols are for. And I encourage all of you to vote, and I encourage all of you to really think hard and long about what are the issues at play and what's really important, and inform yourself. And also think about what you stand for in terms of your values. What Canadian values do you have? Do you value diversity, inclusiveness, equality, safety, health, freedom? If you do, then I think you should look for that expressly in our leaders and how they behave themselves. Leaders or parties or MPPs or whatever it might be, we have to look for that. All right. So that's my main thing I want to talk about today. I'll be sharing a few more posts of some of my really smart political friends, and I'll also do another post just analyzing what I've seen in the last 5-6 years. But that'll be probably a written post. All right. So that's my take. Let me know what you think. Comment below. I'd love to hear from you. All right. Wish you guys all the best. Take care. Bye.